The Lost Year, Chapter 9. Caught. Merlin was sure that speaking to the steward about swapping her duties with Gwen until the visiting nobles left had been one of her better ideas. Lady Emma was lovely, one of the better ladies to visit Camelot, in Merlin's opinion. Gwen would be having a lovely time. Merlin was not. After the initial face-bashing, though that hadn't been intentional on his part, since he'd been aiming for Gwen, Gedrig had proved that when frustrated by the loss of what he wanted, he struck out. She was a walking bruise, but aside from the one on her face, Gedrig was careful not to bruise her where it could be seen. She delighted in frustrating him. It was almost more fun than frustrating Arthur, up to the point when he swung. Then it stopped being fun. He'd started swinging 3 days ago. Last night, Lady Emma had stopped her in the hall, spotted her bruised face, and dragged her to Arthur. He had been incensed, which was a nice change of pace. The last time a visiting noble had been an ass, he hadn't listened to her at all. That had been valiant, since they hadn't told Arthur about Vivian, Alanet, and Trickler until well after the fact. Of course, they had barely known each other when Valiant had come around, but still, Merlin knew now that a noble bent on being an ass would not be stopped unless they were going after someone higher up. But she could save Gwen from the abuse, at least. Her plan was going well. She was sore from head to toe, but Gwen was happy again and had received another letter from Lancelot. She'd shared it with Merlin. It was full of sweet prose and promises of seeing each other again soon. Merlin hoped it could be so, since in all technicality, Lancelot was banished from Camelot, and it was Merlin's fault. She'd convinced him to fake nobility, after all. But it seemed Merlin's luck had finally run out. She cried out in pain as an iron grip fastened around her arm. She only got a small shriek out before another hand clamped over her mouth. She kicked out at her attacker before they threw her into a wall. A hand slapped itself back over her mouth, and she gasped in pain. "You stopped me from getting what I want, peasant whore," Gedrig hissed. Merlin winced. "If I can't have the little curly-haired bitch, I'll take what I want from you." He grabbed hold of the collar of her tunic and tore. Merlin bit down on his hand. He drew back and slapped her across the face. He pulled his hand back to do it again, and a sword practically materialized at Gedrig's neck. "Step back from her, Gedrig." A clear, cold voice rang out. Merlin blinked in surprise. Uther Pendragon himself hadn't even been included in the list of people that might have come to her rescue here. And yet here he stood, a naked sword in his hand pointed at the noble's throat. Behind him, hands on hilts, were Sirs Leon and Franken. Leon stepped forward as Gedrig reeled back. Pulling off his cloak, he wrapped it around Merlin, who was a little too stunned to move. Then she spotted Willis, Lady Emma's son and Arthur's new squire. He looked a little out of breath. Leon led her away before she could hear what was to become of Gedrig. Lady Emma's plan was brilliant, though Arthur would have liked to be the one to follow Merlin all day so he could prevent any mischief before it began. It would be hard to explain to his father. But Willis was new to Camelot, new to Arthur's service. It made sense he would go seeking out the one who'd been in Arthur's service the longest. Sure, maybe Galahad would have made a bit more sense, but practically everyone in the castle knew that Merlin and Arthur were close. It could not realistically have fallen out better. Willis had seen Merlin snatched from the hall and heard her scream. He'd run for the guards. His word would be believed over Merlin's. With him as witness, they could get Gedrig punished. But he ran into Uther, speaking to Leon and one of the other knights, Franken, about patrols. They'd seen the boys panic and followed him. They caught Gedrig just as he ripped Merlin's tunic. Leon escorted her to the physician's quarters, wrapped in his cloak for her own modesty, as her tunic would likely not be salvageable. Franken took Gedrig into custody and had several guards drag him to the throne room. Uther was seething by the time Arthur arrived. "Even attempted rape will not be countenanced in Camelot," Uther raged, and for once Arthur fully felt the target of his father's ire deserved it. "You are stripped of your title and lands," Gedrig sputtered. "Who will you have rule Everwick? I have no sons to pass the title to, Gedrig protested. No, but you've a brother, Arthur suggested. Uther looked at him, frowning slightly as if he'd forgotten Cadric existed. One born out of wedlock, Gedrig snarled at Arthur, bulking slightly as the guards tightened their grip on him. But to a lady of some standing, Arthur addressed his father. Lady Prudence and Lord Ryan were not married, it's true, and she holds but little lands and only a small keep, but she is a lady. Cadric, the brother, has proven to be 20 times the man this one is. Legitimize him. Raise him to a lord of Everwick instead, and you gain a lord who will not only not threaten your subjects, but also be loyal unto his dying breath. Uther had pulled a face at learning that Cadric was born out of wedlock, but learning that regardless both of his parents were nobility seemed to mollify him. Where is this Cadric? The king asked. He's here in Camelot, serving as a guard to his brother, Arthur said, both royals now ignoring the disgraced noble on his knees. You cannot do this! I am a lord! She is just some peasant whore! Gedrig was nearly whining. You are the lowest kind of scum. Arthur's temper had snapped. Your duty as a noble is to protect those beneath you, not to use your status to harm and take advantage of them. It was Leon who laid a hand on Arthur's shoulder, calming him. He stepped back, and Leon leaned forward slightly to mutter in Arthur's ear. She'll be all right. Gaius is with her now. He didn't manage to do more than tear her tunic, but given the bruises, he's been abusing her since she started serving him. Leon whispered, and Arthur's temper simmered back in the direction of a boil. Uther looked to Leon, who bowed his head. Gaius says she will be all right, he said succinctly for the court. Very well. Toss this one in a cell and find this Cadric, he ordered. The guards dragged Gedrig away, looking shocked. Arthur, that was a very clever solution. Well done. You're dismissed. Arthur nodded, bowing his head and leaving, Leon on his heels.